What's going on, guys? Sensible Prepper Live. We're going to be talking about the top 10 survival preps for 2024. Now, let me say this before we get started, because we do this sometimes, the top 10 survival preps. These are the things you need to get started prepping. This is going to be contingent on certain factors, though, that are coming up in 2024 that we've not seen. These are things that we really need to tailor some of our preps toward. Doing the regular prepping of food and water and those kind of things are vital. Medical, your self-defense. But this is specifically toward the 2024. So this is a whole new kind of situation. A lot of times, we do talk about a lot of these things. But again, very specific. Now, Robbie's not going to be here today. We are experiencing quite a bit of a storm. And in fact, there's a lot of areas that do have tornadoes. We seem to be kind of around that so far, but there is a lot of flooding. And so Robbie was actually stuck where he lives because of the flooding. And so he'll be back hopefully next week. We do have Sarah Mack. She's over at the computer. She will be monitoring any kind of questions that come in. And you can ask those questions at any time. She takes note of it. And then when we take a break in a couple of minutes, we'll have a little Q&A, and then we'll get back to our list. But these are the top 10. We have a couple of caveats that we're going to look at as well. So what is the big deal? 2024. I mean, it's another year. Lord knows we've been through different situations year after year. But one of the biggest factors that we're going to be looking at is the presidential election. It's coming up this year. And obviously, there's a lot of division with our country right now. And so a lot of anger, a lot of people wanting completely different things on the opposite ends of the spectrum. And so it does create a lot of, concern. And so that's one thing that we're going to be taking into consideration. Next is the economy. The economy right now, I mean, it's a mess. And, we're paying up to 40% more for our groceries, which is definitely something that, we have to have. But in all of our items, things have gone up. We've watched them go up. I know the other day I saw a news article that Chick-fil-A is raising their prices like 15% across the board. And it's not that Chick-fil-A wants to get more wealthy, which we all should in a sense, but they have to do it because their food prices, their basic food is going up. And so it's more expensive to produce it. But all across the board, the economy definitely has some problems with inflation and then really with a full-blown recession. And so we've got to be prepared for that. And then one of the other big factors is immigration. And the border is just out of control. Millions have crossed over the border, and we're at record high crossings. There's some issues with that specifically, not just inherently having a lot more people in a certain area, but there are some things that we're seeing with this immigration surge that's causing a lot of problems, especially in our big cities. Texas is bearing the brunt, New Mexico and Arizona, but man, we've seen it spreading across the country, and especially again in the big cities. That seems to be a destination, which it seems really funny to me that a lot of those cities were kind of pro, let's bring them in, let them come across. And now, when they're feeling the real true problems that it causes, they're taking steps back. But honestly, it's really too late for that. We've got way too many people that have just poured across the border. So we're going to take a look at those three factors for our 10 list of 10. One thing I do want to mention, I want to thank Exotac. Exotac makes the best fire starters out on the market. You need a fire kit. Fire will create warmth. It gives you light. It boils your water. It'll cook your food. It'll keep predators at bay. I mean, fire is essential. And having a good fire kit with Exotac, especially some of the best fire starting tools on the market, made down in Winder, Georgia. You get 20% off with the link down below in the description. And we appreciate Exotac for being one of our sponsors. Okay, with the first on the list is obviously the election year. What does that mean? I mean, this is part of the of the American experience is we have, a new president, or at least we elect a president or to stay in office if he's already been there and he's done a good job. We elect him for 4 more years. This does affect our country. It's funny, when this was really set up, the president was supposed to just execute the laws, but we've got into across the board. It doesn't matter. We've developed into a country where the president has a lot of power, and those powers can be welded in different ways. And so, with the election coming up, a lot of people are concerned on both sides. I think Michelle Obama just came out and said that if Trump wins, she's scared to death. And she should be scared to death if Biden wins again. But, the fact is there's a lot of division. There's a lot of people that look at it different ways. So how is this going to affect us with our preps? Well, first off, definitely your civil unrest kind of stuff. We saw that before in the 2020 elections where there was a lot of people that were protesting on both sides. And when I say protesting, we saw what was going on across the country. And so even when Trump won, there was a lot of protests that were going on the first time. So we're looking at possible, and I will say more than probable, that we're going to be seeing some issues with protest, which will turn violent. And then there you go. A lot of that has to do with the area you live in. And obviously, if you live in a city, it can be a lot more. There can be a lot more problems. And then, just the anger seems to be, there's a lot of anger. Years ago when the 2-party system seemed to kind of work, it was, there was a lot of working together, some compromise, working together. Yes, there were extremes on both sides, but it seems like we've pulled farther and farther apart. There's large sections of the country that just disagree for so many reasons. And, really we need to be getting along and working together. The old saying, united we stand, divided we fall. And so we need to be looking at what's going to happen. I'll tell you guys, one of the big things, and this is one thing that I've heard a lot of people say, is why vote? They're not counting the vote anyway. But I disagree with that, and I think you should. And one thing that Dan Bongino said, I heard him say this the other day. He said that even if they try to manipulate the election, that a lot of the states, especially the more conservative states, have really tightened up their election laws. Listen, guys, we want a fair election, no matter what. We need to have a fair election. And honestly, if the majority decides to go in certain direction that I don't agree with, then so be it. But we definitely need to have it fair. It needs to be just. It needs to be correct. And steps need to go to fix that. Honestly, guys, I'm going to tell you, and I'm probably going to go on a little rant here just for a second. But if there is questions, a major amount of questioning about the election, then it should be legitimately investigated, whether it's the left or the right or the center. It doesn't matter. We need to make sure that people have faith in our electoral system. And so, but first off, guys, you need to vote. And I know some of you are kind of like, I'm not voting. You need to vote. And not only for the federal election, you need to be voting in your state and your local and your county elections as well. And that's really where you have more say so. You have a little more power in those areas. And so make sure that you do go out and you vote, because there will be a lot of people on candidates that, on the ballot that aren't necessarily on the presidential or national level. So it's very important to get out and to vote, and to keep your area strong. The area that we just happen to live in, it's a very conservative area. And really, I could not go vote and we'd still get really good conservative candidates. But also know your candidates. One of the things that we have been guilty of in the past is whatever letter it happens to have beside it is the one we vote for. And we really don't know if they have multiple candidates that are of the same R or a D beside their name, and just kind of picking and choosing. Find out what your candidate stands for, especially in your local elections. It's very important. And that, to me, is a very important prep. I know it doesn't sound like a prep, but that is a very important prep, guys. We need to live in this world. And like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, we don't need just to barely make it through like Stone Age cavemen. We need to thrive in a grid down situation. And that is what our goal should be, is how can we do the best? Not, man, I've got my food and water and, my ammunition and I'm set. You need to be actively working toward keeping things together politically. So, so obviously vote. The next thing is to just be aware of the situations that are going on. If there are protests, if there are different civil unrest going on, you need to make sure that you know about those areas. You can find out about that more toward your local news. So I highly recommend tuning into your local news. I'm guilty sometimes of just looking at the federal, looking at the headlines and kind of going, okay, but kind of keeping an eye on what's going on locally is important. My father-in-law, a few years ago, when they were having a lot of the BLM Antifa type protests, he was sitting at a red light and there was a massive protest going on. He lives in Chattanooga, and his friend called him and he said, "Hey, you want to stay away from this area?" He goes, "They're having a protest." He goes, "Yeah, I know. I'm sitting in the middle of it." So, knowing that these things can happen, and honestly, guys, and we'll talk a little bit more about civil unrest, but there's a lot of things right now that people are willing to die on. They're taking it as a hill to die on. And so, it can cause a lot of disruption. So again, make sure you vote. That's a big prep. Make sure that you know what's going on in your general area and stay out of the areas that are dangerous. Okay, number 2 is the economy, inflation. Inflation just means that your dollar's worth less. There's a local hamburger joint here. This little local place is great. They have a $5.99 cheeseburger, French fries, and your drink. I mean, it's like super cheap, even in good times. It's really cheap. And so we've watched it go up from $5.99 to $6.99. Then it went to $7.99. Now it's at $8.99. And it's only been about a couple of years. We've just watched it go up. They say that food prices right now are up 40%. So, you've got to be careful with your spending dollar. One thing that I brought up a couple of weeks ago is, guys, if you don't have a side gig, you need to have something. It's always good to make some extra money to be able to have it, especially if your particular field that you work in, your career can be unstable in a downturn. If you know that, I could possibly get laid off, yeah, you can get some unemployment, but honestly, guys, you need to be working because that makes the economy, it makes the country go better. So making sure that, you've got something on the side to be able, and it might just be going to Facebook Marketplace and buying and trading. Just make sure you carry your gun if you do that. One thing though, is that, again, your dollar's lesser, but if you'll watch, we had been looking at some property recently and housing prices have gone through the roof. Even rentals are going through the roof. Buying a little piece of property, which is difficult to do in the first place, it's going through the roof. And it was funny, the other week we were driving around and looking for a piece of property, and I told Shannon, I said, look, it used to be that you could find a piece of property and you may pay a little more for it, and you had to look and choose and find out. It feels like now that if you don't pick up that piece of property as soon as you find it, that it's going to be gone. I mean, it's like a race against the clock. So, it's just one of those things that's happening now. As far as what can you do about it? What can you do about the economy? A lot of you guys have investments. I would really seriously sit down with my financial planner or with, your stocks and look at them and see where those investments are. See if they're in more stable. No, they may not bring as much yield, but at least you won't lose on it. And so, but again, I'm not a financial expert, but I'm saying go and sit down with your financial planner. I know John Lovell did this a while back, and he went and actually took some of his investments and put them toward things that were more stable, things that were seeming to grow in a bad economy. And that really is a very smart move. The second part is to have the tangible assets, such as gold, silver, your precious metals. We'll get into ammo in a minute, but, of course, obviously firearms are great for that and ammunition, but gold and silver, it's been around since the beginning of time. It's a great way to barter. It's a great way to trade, and it's a great way to preserve your wealth. And if you're looking for a very reputable company, is Scottsdale Mint. Those guys are awesome. I've known them for many years. But a lot of times I'll go even to local gun shows or flea markets, and they'll have coin silver, junk silver, and you can buy it there, and just see what your price is, what you're paying for it, and know when you go. And you can find these places. We have a local place here in Greenville that I can go, and they buy junk silver. They keep a pretty good stock of it, and so when I have some cash, I go up and I purchase it, and I just put it back. I don't put a ton into it in a sense, but yet it just helps. And so that's one of the things about an economy that's really rough. Now, and I'll tell you a little trick about precious metals. And I think this is one thing that it really helps, is that you take that money, you take the metal that you have, and you get it out, and you find out the true value of what you have. How long can you pay your bills with that? You take a month's bills, you look at it, you say, okay, I've got this much gold, I've got this much silver. How long can I completely pay my bills? And it was one of the things that gave me a roadmap to be able to plan out, instead of just going and saying, oh, I need some silver. Oh, I need some gold. Oh, I got a little money. Let me get some silver. Is to have an organized plan, and it'll help you. One of the things that happened in Argentina back in 2001 was that a lot of the peso dropped to nothing. Gold and silver prices went through the roof. People were able to pay off loans, pay off debt, pay off property, because they had gold and silver put back. And so it really was a hedge against that depression that was happening down in Argentina. So gold and silver, it's proven itself over and over. So I know some of you guys, I don't know why you're so resistant to it. But, I know the old thing about, well, I've got, brass, steel, and copper. Well, you don't have more than I do. So, and I still purchase gold and silver, but I think both, and you diversify. All right, we're going to go to food, and then we're going to trip over. We're going to go back over to some questions. There's something about food in particular, guys. I mean, we all need it, and growing food is really a great way to do it. Growing your own food, having a garden. I know a lot of you don't necessarily have a way to do that. But let's just talk about some things that I'm seeing with food production worldwide. When we were moving west in the United States, there was a lot of buffalo, and the U.S. government, decided they wanted to eradicate the buffalo, because that's how the Indians were continuing their resistance against the move westward. Because the Indians were a very formidable group of people. And so there was a campaign to wipe out their food source. And that's pretty much what they did. They almost sent buffalo into extinction. Right now in Ireland, this past week, the Irish government paid for 200,000 cattle to be killed because of climate change. 200,000 cattle just ended. And it's happened all over the world in the name of these green initiatives, and because of cow flatulations. They're eradicating our food source. Notice what's going on in Germany right now. The German farmers are protesting. What are they protesting? They're protesting these green initiatives. Farmers are some of the hardest working people on the planet. And yet it's gotten so bad that they're taken to the streets with their tractors, missing days of work, and protesting against these things that are going on. The Dutch farmers had to deal with that last year and the year before. There is a concerted effort to hamper our food source. Why? I don't know all the answers, except that food is a way to control people. But we're seeing it in the name of green energy. We've seen it in a number of other countries that have sent them back to the Stone Age because they're getting rid of their food sources. Guys, being able to create your own food or grow your own food is a great way to be more self-reliant. It's a great way to take power back to yourself. But if the food sources and the grocery store prices, which it will affect grocery store prices if they go up. I mean, like a buddy of mine was telling me the other night, he goes, I did my part on climate change or whatever by having a big steak. And, the thing is that is a legitimate food source that we depend on. And there's a lot of different attacks on a lot of different fronts. So food sources are really, and two, you all know that there's a big push toward these insects or whatever. There's another push toward this bioengineered food product. And guys, I don't know about you, but I really like, real food. And I know Bill Gates is a big one. He's a big proponent, and he is buying up farmland as fast as he can. And a lot of these are productive farms, and he's shutting them down. What's the end game? So let's get back to, what are you going to do about your food production? Now, again, this is 2024. We're seeing it ramped up. So we need to take heed. You should always have some food put back. You should always have your pantry full, have some items put back. One of the things about food storage is that it just gives you more options. So if something does happen, you can sit back and go, okay, we're good for right now, but we're going to need to make some decisions, but we have time to make those decisions. And that's one of the most important elements when it comes to prepping. You cannot prep everything you need. If you're a prepper and you're trying to prep for the next 50 years of living, you can't do it physically. You're going to have to find a way to replenish, and gardens obviously are one of the best, but having a garden. But in lieu of that, let's say you live in an apartment in the city, put back some food. It's not going to be enough to sustain you for a long term, but it will give you a week, 2 weeks, a month. When COVID hit, it was a perfect example. COVID hit and it was like, and they had lockdowns. Well, guess what? We had food, and we went, well, I hate it, and we do need to get a few things, but we can sit here and for a while and live. And so it allowed us to have better choices instead of running to the store in a panic and buying the last bit of toilet paper if we could find it. And toilet paper, honestly, guys, when you don't have food, is the least of your worries. Food on your plate is a more important part, because you got to have food on your plate to need that toilet paper later. So food, very important, and especially now, more important than ever. But really, one of the end games, and guys, if you are a complete prepper, you are immersed, and you have 30 years of food put back, and you've got all the things set up, and you got rain catchment systems, and you have a way to heat your home, you got solar, you got all of those things. Really, the end game is homesteading and having a place to be able to grow your own food and sustain yourself in that environment. And that, to me, is the end game. Putting a whole bunch of money into things that are just going to rot after a while. Sometimes that's necessary, and it's according to your situation. But I just highly recommend, guys, not being so dependent. One thing that we do is we go to local farmers, local dairy, local meat processors. And that's where we buy our food, a lot of our food. And the reason we do that is, number one, it supports our local businesses, but it also gives us a food source that we know what we're getting. So that is something too that you can do to augment, instead of going to the grocery store and buying things that are made who knows where. Go to a local farmer's market, buy your vegetables there. That they're not urinating on the plants or putting some kind of crazy pesticide on there. And you can find out what they're doing, and you have a firsthand experience. So food is huge. And guys, it's going to be more important. We're seeing it eradicated. We're seeing food production eradicated across the world. Don't get caught in that scenario. So we're going to go to some questions, and we're just going to kind of see what you guys have. And it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically toward what we're talking about, but it needs to be toward prepping.
Sis Clark says, good morning. I'm also a Marine and have noticed a lot of people getting the EGA tattooed on them. Do you classify this as a potential risk in an SHTF, military style tattoos in general?
I'll tell you guys, the EGA, we're seeing this woke, go broke. We've seen it all across the board. I don't know. It just causes more and more division. And I definitely think that, to me, my personal faith is equality toward men. And the thing is we're being forced into this, and it's an agenda that's just really weird. One of the things, obviously, being a Marine, that, recruitment is way down. And yet we have more threats right now than we've ever had. So if here's the thing, guys, it's going to come down to just standing, because honestly, with the surveillance systems and everything that they have, I heard today that your cell phone, and you can take an infrared camera and watch it. It actually takes pictures of your face every 5 seconds. It's just taking a little snapshot. And they are monitoring and watching everything we're doing. And that's why it's important to speak out. Now, we're going to get to a little bit of something else that's on the other side of that, but it's very important to speak out and to speak your mind, especially to those that are around you and your friends. If you're in the military, yeah, you've got to be careful, because, you are in the military. But we need to make some changes, and hopefully this coming year we can do that. But yeah, it's kind of scary.
HD Pristine Care asks, Sootch, I've been hearing for several years now that things will get crazy. What is the difference about this year as opposed to 2015-16 Jade Hell?
Right. I understand that. Believe me. One thing, when I first got on YouTube, and it was 14 years ago, there were people that were saying, if you don't have your food, it's too late. If you don't have food stocked up to the ceiling, your basement full, then you're not going to make it. And, obviously it's been 14 years later. We have seen some things that have happened. We have seen COVID. We have seen, but understand this, that just like with the American Revolution, just like with the Civil War, it didn't happen overnight. It took years for it, but they were seeing the signs, and it built up and built up. But one of the things that leads me to prepping, probably more than anything else, is revelation, is end time prophecy. And I grew up with that, and I know that the end is going to come, and it's going to come in a very ugly way. And we're seeing a lot of those signs, and even more and more. Do I think it's really going to happen? Here's the thing. I don't personally think that we're going to go back into a Stone Age Mad Max type scenario. I'm not saying it can't happen. It could happen. If we had an EMP, it would be the closest to, that happening. But I don't necessarily think we're going to see that. But what I do think is what we're seeing. We're seeing a massive drop in our spending dollar. We're seeing that food production is being taken over by governments under the banner of climate change and green energy. We're seeing that we're going to be forced into certain ways. They tried to force us into electric cars, and which I'm all for technology, but I'm not about force. We're seeing that that's backfiring on them, because they're just not, people aren't buying them. And so, there are some ways to be able to counterbalance. I think that there's a lot of good signs, I think that a lot of times when we do things, I think Trump actually stopped the momentum of what the end goal is. Listen, there are some, the deep state and the one world order and all that, the Illuminati and whatever you want to call it. They are hell-bent on control sooner or later. And one thing that happens, though, is they get roadblocks, and that's us stepping up and going, no. So prep, put some things together. After COVID, you should know you need to prep, but put yourself in a good situation, and then just live life, enjoy your family. And if things start to happen, then you start building up. And that is the best way, because otherwise, guys, it is coming, and we're seeing it in so many ways. And listen, we have threats with Russia. We have threats with China. We have threats with Iran and what's going on in the Middle East. There's just a lot of stuff that's going on out there. So do I think it's going to happen this year? Not necessarily, but we do have a number of things that we need to be careful of. And listen, we've got an immigration problem right now where millions and millions of people are crossing the border, and we're going to get into some threats with that in a minute. But that is really causing a massive strain on who we are as a very successful country, one of the best countries in the world. But if America falls, they're all going to fall.
Daniel Hampton says, hey, Don, I love your channel. I am
Thank
moving
you.
from behind enemy lines of California to Montana, and I have an AR pistol. Should I SBR it in Montana or leave it a pistol? And what is a good suppressor to keep? 0.
One thing that as far as a pistol, I'm kind of waiting. The ATF has not died. I mean, they were defeated. They lost a battle, but they're going to come back against the pistols. And when that does, then, personally, I would leave it as a pistol until you felt like, I really probably need to go ahead and SBR this. One thing about it is you're going to have to wait till you get to Montana anyway. Well, obviously, with California, but I think that I would be slow to depend on the pistol as always being there, because the ATF is definitely really hell-bent on taking away our rights on that. But turning it into an SBR, I think that would be cool. And if you just like an SBR, the problem is you're going to have some restrictions there. And especially if you're moving at all, you've got to keep your paperwork up, and it is an NFA item. So it does add some risk. But man, they're fun. They're fun. They're cool. Okay, let's go to some more stuff. We need to get back on it. All right. Now, number 4 is civil unrest. And with the presidential elections, it is going to cause it's going to cause it. I mean, let's face it, with January 6th, we saw really the other side coming out and protesting. Was it a riot? No. I mean, we saw, we've seen it. Tucker's released all that information. A lot of people are starting to push this out, and it was a narrative that they created. Was there some violence a little bit here and there? Looks like it. Looks like there were some things, but they've been led back to agitators that were actually federal agents. So, I don't know the whole situation, but I do know that people are pissed. People are mad. People are tired. Whether you're on the right or the left, and that's the big problem, is that it is a recipe for a catastrophe. So, again, if you're in those cities and you don't want to get involved, I'm not telling you not to protest. I think protest is one of those things that's one of our God-given basic rights as American citizens. But I think it needs to be done in order. And I think that the one thing is when people go out of bounds, then, it compromises what their goal is unfortunate. I'm definitely not talking about the January 6th thing. I think that was a setup. I definitely think it was a problem. But what we're seeing climate change protest where protesters are sitting in the middle of the road and not letting people pass, and law enforcement's just not doing anything about it. That to me is crazy. And then you have the Palestine issue that's going on. You have a lot of protesters there that are doing the same thing. They're causing problems. They're disrupting commerce. Listen, commerce, business has to continue. It needs to continue. And then, of course, with the election coming up and just those issues, and we're going to see that. So coming up this year, I think we're going to see an increase in those type protests. We've seen climate change protests in Europe really big for a long time. It's not been quite as bad here in the U.S., but we're seeing it more and more. And so, and knowing what to do if you're faced in that situation. What do you do when you come up on a protest? What do you do when your car's blocked? I'll watch on TikTok and, shorts and Instagram, whatever. When you look at some of these drivers that finally get sick of it and they just get out and they throw the people off, when the cops come and they throw them down. It's going to be your call, but I'm not going to sit there in a roadblock with people just sitting in the middle of the road and not do something about it. That's just my personal temperament. I'm just not going to put up with it. But what do you do? And how do you avoid those areas? And again, local news, those kind of things. But those kind of protests can erupt into bigger protests like we saw a couple of years ago with Antifa and BLM. And Antifa always seems to be hanging around in some of these areas anyway. They're looking for chaos. So look for civil unrest, stay out of those areas. And especially if you live in the cities, you need to consider this with your home, which we're going to look at that in a minute. Gun control, with it being an election year, gun control is back on the, we've really gotten a lot of victories, honestly, thanks to the Supreme Court and the federal appellate courts. They have really held the line, and it's really great to see. Yes, they'll appeal it, and then you got to go back through the whole process. But, California has been back and forth, but it's good that they've at least been back and forth. There is movement. So gun control is something that we've got to be careful of, and it's according to what happens with the 2024 elections. The House right now is holding a thin margin, but they are holding. And then the Senate, it's a really close race. So if we could get some Republicans in there, great. If we lose seats, we could see the gun control issue coming back. And so that's one thing to really watch for. Number two is what the ATF is doing. And the ATF, through the justice system, through Biden's push, and we all know that it's not Biden, it's the people behind Biden. They're pushing for these initiatives, and they are going outside the law to create law. But, then you've got to be able to fight that. So it's injustice. It's the Justice Department that's out of control, and they're not doing what they really should be doing. Another problem is that ammo companies right now are being bought out. A lot of ammo companies are just being bought, and a lot of these buyers are foreign nationals. And is that good? Is that bad? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But it is a little bit unsettling. We see these companies that have been here in the U.S. for so long, and now they're bought out. They'll continue production in the U.S., but hopefully. But you don't know. You don't know who these people are. What is their agenda? And so one thing that I would very much encourage you to do is to make sure that you have ammo supplies that you need. It's really come back to a decent level. I actually found 44 Magnum at my local Palmetto State Armory the other day. I was shocked because you find it here and there. And they had quite a bit of supply. But one of my friends that works there said that won't last. He said, we get it in and it gets gone in a hurry. So make sure that you have ammunition stocked up for your self-defense ammunition. I've said this for years, but people, when the ammo scarcity happened, and I would show some ammo that I found in a tin, and people would, you're just showing off. You got all this ammo. You're probably one that hoarded it. These were people that just didn't buy ammunition to store up. So you need to make sure, guys, you have, and I'm not talking about going out and buying 1 million rounds. I'm saying go out and buy enough sufficient, and I would highly recommend having at least 1,000 rounds for your go-to rifle, your go-to pistols, and you want to have at least that. More is much better, but at least have that before, you have, I got a couple of boxes, I'm good. No, you're not good. So you need to have a little extra, because with some of the things that we're talking about, and with crime, the rising crime, which is, I don't really have that even listed in here. We've seen the rise in crime happening for so long. It's not specific to 2024, but watch for that. But be careful. Watch for gun control, because it could go either way. Political persecutions. We've seen this. January 6th, that was a giant debacle. I think the one problem is the Democrats in the House felt threatened. And so they have sent the FBI on a crusade to find everybody that was even there protesting at all. I remember before, when people were going to go up to Washington, and we had some friends going up, and there was some discussion about us going up. And I said, nah, I don't think so. And thank goodness I didn't. Because actually, we did get a call from the FBI asking me to prove that I wasn't there pretty much. And I was able to, but it was unnerving to have to even answer these questions about. And then we see on the third year of January 6th, they just arrested like 200 people that were there. They found going in at night and taking these people out of their homes that were just maybe on the grounds, weren't even doing anything, but just there supporting a certain cause. So we're seeing a lot of political persecution and injustice toward other parties. We've seen Trump go through the ringer, and whether you like him or not, this is a witch hunt that they're putting. When you see the Biden and all the money that he's laundered from Ukraine, and there's just evidence after evidence after evidence, and you don't see, of course, he is the sitting president, so it makes it a little tough. But guys, when he gets out, he won't experience all that. Hunter Biden, everybody knows. Everybody's seen the tapes. They know what's going on, and nothing's being really done about it. They're kind of throwing some stuff out there, but it's always plea deals, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But the thing is they're hell-bent to keep Trump from running. And then we're seeing these states that are going up. We're going to take Trump off the ballot. We're going to take Trump. That affects everyone. You may not be a Trump supporter. There's some other great candidates out there, and some that really have stepped forward that I've been impressed with. But I'm going to tell you, we need some leadership regardless of who gets in there. And it's going to take something. But obviously, Trump is being persecuted, and we're seeing a lot of people that stand up like Tucker Carlson or different leaders that are conservative that are getting their heads lopped off. They'll bring out some allegations, or they try to do this, or they bring up stuff that happened 30 years ago. So with that being said, political persecution, guys, you got to be careful. You just need to be careful what you get involved in. And you don't want to be painted with that kind of brush. But you do want to stand up for your convictions. You want to stand up for what you believe in. And if you don't, you're going to lose everything. Guys, that's what it takes, is for us to stand up. The fact is a lot of these people that are climate change and these Palestinian protesters and all this stuff, they're a very small minority, but they are very vocal. And that is where they get their power. Take some of that power and put it to use for good. That's what we need to do. And so we need to be very vocal to our local representatives, and even on the national level, get involved and make sure they know where you stand. It gives, if they're a good conservative or wanting to do the right thing, then that gives them confidence to move ahead. When all they hear about is the complaints, then it makes them kind of teeter a little bit. Let them know, hold them accountable. Okay. Home security. Home security is big. It's gotten bigger. We've got a lot of options. You've got alarm systems. You've got some passive alarm systems. You have home alarm systems that they'll come in and install. But you can put up all kind of different alarms. One of our favorites is our driveway alarm. And it's at the end of our driveway. Whenever anybody pulls in or walks down, it goes off. And it is very consistent. eMarcos, I think it is. EMCR, because people have asked me before. And I got it on Amazon. No, a buddy of mine sent it to me, but they are on Amazon. And I set it up. I did a whole review on it, and it'll tell you the name of it there. But just look up driveway alarms. And we set it up on a fence, and anytime somebody comes through. Well, the problem was when that alarm would go off, and I would look down the driveway in the middle of the night, and I wouldn't see anybody. And so I take my flashlight and try to shine down there. I ended up getting night vision out. So finally, I put up a spotlight. It's a motion sensing light that's solar powered. Works great. Now, if we have, cloudy days and rainy days for 3 or 4 days in a row, it kind of comes on a little dim, but it's super bright, lightens up the whole area. So somebody trips the alarm, the light comes on, I go out, I can look, and I can see what's going on. And it's not very expensive, fairly reasonable in price. But there are a lot of options. There are also options to fortify your doors and build those up. But let's say the grid goes down. Fortifying your doors is going to be definitely one that would be good to have. Even those plates that you can put behind your door. It's almost impossible to get it open. Putting 3M film on your windows that keep it from, if somebody throws a rock, they can't bust the window. One thing that I like, more low tech even, is perimeter alarms. And in fact, we did some perimeter alarm videos, a number of them that are just like a Claymore mine, but it's just a little thing that hits a primer and it sets off an alarm system. And so we've got some, and it's fifth ops, and I'm getting ready to do a review. They had some new products, and so we're going to be testing those. But having a way that, man, if the power goes down or you have some kind of issues, you can set these up. And to be forewarned is to be forearmed. And it gives you just a few seconds to be able to get yourself and know what's going on around you. So, having home security, keeping an eye on things that just aren't right, not necessarily being the little old retired school teacher with the binoculars looking at her window, spying on all of her neighbors, but you need to know what's going on. And so home security is very important. Okay. Next, this is a big one, and it's immigration. We've seen the people pouring across the borders. The real funny thing is we're seeing military age males mainly crossing the border. We do see families, we do see children, but we see an incredible number coming from all over. These aren't just coming from Mexico and Central America and South America. These people, there's a lot of people coming from Africa. They're coming from China. There are a lot of people from the Middle East. They've captured a number, or at least tagged them, coming in from Turkey, from Syria, from Iran, potentials for more disruption. And it's really crazy how we have this crowd coming across the border. And then when the state of Texas says, we're going to set up our own system because the federal government's not doing it, and then the federal government sues them for doing those measures. What is up with that? There is definitely a concerted effort to get all these people in here. What is it? We have our ideas, but there is a problem. So what does immigration do? What is a mass amount of people coming in? Number one, it just puts a real strain on our infrastructure. It's a very big strain on the road systems, on the jobs, on, food production, and the great thing is a lot of those guys will go out and work and produce food. But what if we're closing the food sources down? So it's going to cause more problems with water, more problems with the infrastructure on our power grid. It causes a lot of strain. We've been backing off because of these green energy. I'm telling you what, guys, green energy initiatives are going to destroy us. They're going to absolutely destroy us in the end. But we've stopped building nuclear power plants in most areas. And that is one thing that's clean energy that is really able to take care of. Here in South Carolina, I think we have 90% nuclear power. And we are on the edge of that's about all we can do because people are pouring into this area. When you have people that are pouring into this area that are even illegal, and it just causes more issues. But number two is they're bringing different kinds of diseases that we have eradicated 100 years ago, and they're being reintroduced into our system and other just common diseases. But these things, even leprosy. So there are things that are coming into our country that have not been here for a long time. But number three is crime is gone through the roof in these certain groups, and they're bringing it in. So you're having gangs, you're having more drug problems. It's just a lot of problems that is occurring because of these people pouring across the border. And it's really sad because I have a really good friend of mine who has his wife is from South America. And he went through all the process to get her citizenship. And then he looks and says, well, I should have just sent her across the border because it costs them a lot of money, thousands and thousands of dollars to do it right. And it's injustice is what it is. And then, of course, they get to the cities and then they're given rooms and food and health care, according to Gavin Newsom. It's absolutely nuts. Okay, let's go to hygiene. Number 9, hygiene. And so then that really feathers in with this. Hygiene, guys, I stated this a while back in my video about lessons from the Civil War for survival. The number one killer in the Civil War was hygiene. It was, and when I say hygiene, people, they died of dysentery, died of cholera, died of different type diseases, almost 2 to 1. From actual combat or battle. So in a grid down situation, or even when the economy starts to kind of really take a big downturn, is that trash pickups less. There's a lot of things that can slow down. And so you've got to keep your hygiene up, wash your hands, keep your place clean. Make sure you have hygiene items, be sanitary, stay healthy, exercise. I know it's the first of the year and everybody's, got their New Year's resolutions. Make it a real mission and not just a resolution. Get yourself in good shape. And that goes unsaid in a way, but guys, it's getting more and more critical to get that done. And your hygiene's even more important. Vehicle maintenance, just keeping your vehicle organized and maintained, making sure that if you need to go somewhere and you need to get out of an area, you can do that because your car is in good shape. And also having your get home bag in your car, make sure that you do have some supplies, have some water back there, have your tools that you need, just some survival supplies and have them set aside. And that way, at least you have that. But again, keep your gas tank at least half full. If really, you should keep it that way in case something were to happen, and it'll allow you the opportunity to get out of an area. Or get on the road and then just run out of gas. And again, and organize your preps. Get your preps together. See what you have. Just like we talked about with the precious metals, where you have, I can pay my bills for 6 months, but with this precious metals, find out how much food do you have. What does your medical supplies look like? What is your ammunition storage? What are these things? And get organized and get yourself in good shape. I remember back in 2020 when we had the election, and I was sitting in my shop loading up AR-15 magazines on election night. Don't wait till election night. We've got a few months, and we need to be prepping and getting ready. And again, specifically toward being an election year, being with the economy the way it is, and then with immigration, with the upsurge that's happening right now. Okay, let's go to a few more questions.
Sis Clark asks, what's your favorite PCC to use? I want to get one for my bug out bag that can fold down.
Well, there's a lot of options. I would get it in 9mm for pistol caliber carbine. I know 10 and 45 is great, but for having ammunition that's readily available about anywhere. The AR-15 is great. I really like Brigade Quartermasters. They make a very soft shooting AR, or CMMG. I like them because of their recoil systems. And I like it because parts are pretty readily available. It's funny. I do have a Strebog SP9A3 that has a roller delay blowback, and it is foldable. It's a 9mm, and that is a great gun. In fact, we're getting ready to do a 10mm version of that because it is so soft shooting. I keep finding myself taking that gun to the range with us. But to me, really, if it was a go-to gun, I would look more toward an AR-15 style. And of course, obviously, you're going to have one that either you're going to have the buffer tube, the extension where you can fold it, or not. But that's what I would do.
Daniel Hansen asks, hey Don, I'm thinking about putting a good ammunition in my kit for SHTF. Do you have any experience with Black Hills 5.56 77 grain OTM, or what would you recommend?
Black Hills ammunition is excellent. It is excellent, and you want to go ahead and get your rifle sighted in. One of the things, though, as far as its cost, some of that ammunition can be very expensive, and there are also frangible type ammunitions that you can get for 5.56 that especially for a home defense situation. But Black Hills ammunition's excellent, and so yeah, you're good to go with that.
I have two questions that are kind of similar. Iberian Link Survival asks, what kind of jobs on the side do you recommend that are easy to get on and earn good money in a reasonably short amount of time? And Mike Franciscus asks, what do you think would be a good home-based business?
Well, there are so many different home-based businesses, guys. The internet is so big, and so many different ways to get into something. Let me say this first. As my son came to me recently, and we were talking about it, and he had a certain idea, and I said, "Look," and he was indecisive. I said, "First, get involved. If that's the area you want to get into, get involved in it. It may not be what keeps you there, but it will open up opportunities for you." Not everybody's going to get on YouTube and make videos, and there's a lot of other options out there. I have a good friend of mine that started an online gun sales business, and now he is tremendous. Has a tremendous business. But there's so many opportunities out there. One thing about getting into the gun industry is it's tough because everybody wants to be in it. But personally, I think going more toward as far as like doing odd jobs, getting involved in something that can carry you through, looking for jobs or looking for an opportunity that is not going to be affected by a downturned economy or issues. One thing that everybody's going to be looking for is somebody to help fix things, help do things. Just be kind of a handyman. And of course, you've got to have that kind of propensity to be able to do that. You've got to have that kind of bent. But being able to do those kind of things, building decks, doing lawn care, doing whatever, and getting started. One thing that I've talked about a number of times is looking into a business like candle making, soap making, pottery. The things that people need that can do it with low tech. Now, are we going to get down to that place? I don't know. But I did do a video about having hobbies that actually would lead you into being a better prepper. But as far as, just really recommending something, especially online, there are just so many, and it's really up to you. It's up to your aptitude. And, that to me is something. What are you interested in? Where do you want to start? I have a friend of mine that she started a business making with backpacks, and just develop. And at first it was kind of slow, and there were certain things, and now it's like, because of the opportunities that she has by having a lot of experience, it's stepped out and stepped out and stepped. Now the quality is over the top. The ideas that are being brought are incredible. And so, don't think that you're going to start and it's going to go boom. Start, learn, learn, learn. You're really going through school. That's what I did with YouTube. I started out slow, and it took me a while. And then once it started, I'd had all this experience to where I was able to handle the success. So do your research. Find out what you want to do. Find out what you can make a mission out of, and then go for it.
Patriot Fever 1776 asked, what would be the best way to practice scavenging without actually doing it?
Well, to me, it's like, what are items that could possibly be needed? What are those things? What am I going to be looking for if it's that kind of area? And then starting to notice and know where those things are. Now, you don't want to steal property. You don't want to go and you do something wrong. But being able to say, okay, you know what, leaf springs on a car, leaf springs, and they don't do that like they used to, but on big trucks, if there's a big junkyard, those are used for making tools. There's a lot of things. They used to make the kukris. They still do. The kukri knives from Nepal were made from leaf springs. It's a very hard, very well heat treated metal. But finding certain things, one of the things, especially down in Africa, is they'll salvage anything to make anything. And they have these huts, and they'll actually use Pepsi bottles as their windows, and they'll set them up, and they use that as their glass. So there's a lot of things that can be used and recycled. And so, I guess the thing is starting to make a list of things that, you could use. We used to do videos, and I kind of ran out of ideas in a sense, but it was different multiple use items, and like baking soda or, these bottles, and did a whole bunch of stuff like that. And it was amazing what I could think up and begin to say, okay, you could do this, you could do that. And so I think that's the one thing, is to sit down and just make a list out and think about some items that, that are around that can be used for multiple purposes.
Bucky 1966 asked, where is the best place for medical supplies?
I would check out Medical Gear Outfitters. That's my good friend Dietrich from Skinny Medic channel, and he uses North American Rescue, which is one of the top medical suppliers out there especially for outdoor and for police, law enforcement. Well, law enforcement is police, but fire departments, things like that, medical for EMTs. And he is an excellent, he's an EMT, he's a paramedic himself. And so he really knows a lot in his channel, Skinny Medic, but they do a lot, and their business is huge right now because people are really looking to get that. So I'd highly recommend them. Another alternate is USN ER Doc. And when I say alternate, Doc does some completely different stuff. It's really cool. And he is an actual doctor. So that is someone else. It's amp3.net, I believe it is. But you can go to USN ER Doc YouTube channel and check and find it. But I really, and they're great people. I love Dave and Beth. They're just awesome people. So, all right, I think it's time. We've blown through it. Guys, again, it's 2024. It's not the end of the world. I'm not saying all hell's going to break loose and we're going back into the Stone Age. But what I am saying is, with the election coming up, we're pretty much assured that there's going to be some stuff that's going to happen. And then with the economy the way it is right now, guys, it's like there's some things that are a little bit outside the norm. So you need to be kind of prepared for that. Think about some things that you can do. Again, invest in precious metals. Put yourself in good shape, or at least take the investments you have and make sure they're geared toward companies that are actually going to survive some economic downturn. What are the ones that are going to be best? And then with the immigration, there's not a lot that you can do right now except be vocal. But then again, just be aware that these issues, whether it's sickness, whether it's, problems with the infrastructure, or even crime, and you're going to have an uptick in crime and drug use. And so making sure that, you keep those things in mind. So we really appreciate you guys being here. Again, we want to give a big thank you to Exotac. Check out Exotac. You need a fire kit just for whatever. You want to light your barbecue. You want to light a bonfire. You want to do whatever. But it's essential for survival. And you get a 20% off using Sootch 20 with the link down below in the description. They're made in Winder, Georgia, and we really appreciate Exotac. Also, I want to give a big thank you to Sarah Mack for monitoring the questions, asking the questions, and we really appreciate her as well. Hopefully, Robbie will be back next week. So be strong, be of good courage. God bless America. Long live the Republic.